Reverend Man here, and I've got AmberAmber, the gal so nice they had to name her twice. She has arrived here through dangers untold and hardships unnumbered. And now, after fighting her way past the Goblin City, she's going to take back the child that I did not steal, I ate because I'm an atheist. Okay, so Amber's here to talk about deconversion, her deconversion, and that's what we're going to do because lobsters. Amber, thank you for your time and energy to do this, and your screen name does not match the YouTuber name that I put. Oh, I'm a super mega professional.
It's okay.
Elekric Skeptic, channel in the description. And anything else you might want added, I'll add there later. So we've also got another woman besides Amber here that I have to shout out, Pragmatic Crystal, in the chat. So she's married, though, so I'm not allowed to flirt with her. Don't know if AmberAmber is married yet, but I will not be flirting with her. I swear.
Oh, you're so sweet. No, I'm divorced and in relationships, so because I'm polyamorous and all that. So,
so you're saying there's a chance. Okay. Anyways, so what? Let's start from the beginning, if you will. You know, only 13 billion years ago when the universe started. Let's start with growing up. You know, what did you have a religion in your household or multiple religions, and if so, what was that like?
I guess so I found out several years ago that my mom has always been an atheist, and she just kind of didn't tell anyone because it wasn't acceptable to be an atheist. But I was raised more or less secular, but loosely Christian in Canada. Just sort of, I guess, like, oh, there's a God or whatever, but nobody really said to pray or to do anything about it. I was baptized, but that was more of a, like, people baptized their kids kind of as a thing just to wind up with godparents and have a party. It wasn't like a real God thing. So, and my family is mostly secular. We're mixed. Some of us are Jewish. So it's like not really nobody, and the Jews are all atheists and secular too. So it's like, none of us really care. It wasn't a thing until my public school closed down. And then I got sent to Catholic school, which was about, like, it was kind of diagonal from our house, and we lived on the corner. So, and it was on the other corner. And that's when it happened. I was indoctrinated.
Oh, yeah. Now, see, in America, there are Catholic and Christian schools. Usually they're private, though. So was this a private school or?
No. In Canada, due to the fact that they basically, because there's not nearly as many people here and lots of tundras, and also in order to steal land properly, you need to indoctrinate the indigenous tribes. So the Catholic Church to this day is still a bit subsidized by the government because they were the only ones willing to live in the middle of nowhere in order to indoctrinate indigenous people for the whole land grab thing. It seemed like a really nice thing. Oh, we're going to give them education, but really not so nice. Pretty brutal. So to this day, we still have funding of the Catholic Church. And so that started, I think, in the 70s, restarted rather, that the government, because they had stopped for a while and made Catholic schools private. And then it restarted again in the 70s, that the government started giving them almost the same amount of money as public schools, a little bit less. But so, yeah, they're open for everyone, unfortunately.
So there's no clause about separation of church and state?
No. Okay. And yet we're the 17th most atheist nation in the world. So apparently that clause just makes people double down and want to be religious even more.
So, describe that, you went to classes, normal classes, math, science, etc. And then was one class like Bible class or what happened?
It was just called religion. And so, and as if that's the only religion. And so it was just mixed in with all our
just,
classes. Yeah.
the time to go to the religion class, but by religion we mean our religion,
Yes.
no other religion. We're going to ignore all those, you know. So
Yes.
how was that introduced? You know, was the teacher nice? You know, were they charismatic? Was it like a sermon? Was it like a lesson?
It was like lessons, and I didn't really buy much of it because I already had the idea that um, God's like maybe, and there's no such thing as he double hockey sticks, as we say up here, and so I didn't really. I took it with a grain of salt, but I was also a super like intellectually curious child, so I was interested. I just thought it was all mythological until March of grade 2. My grandparents died a week apart, and I mourned them. And then at school, they were like, "Let's all pray for Amber's grandparents, who she will meet in heaven." I was like, "What? What do you mean I'm going to meet them in heaven?" And then they had me hook, line, and sinker because I just thought they were dead and that was it. And they told me, "Oh no!" And so, you know, I had just turned 7. My birthday is in February, so I was like ahead of, like, I was younger than all the other kids, but still in the grade with them. So it's pretty easy to convince a newly 7-year-old mourning their grandparents that they get to see them again. Um, yeah, so that's what did it. The thought of seeing my grandparents. Yeah.
Oh, was there a church service as well, or was it just classes?
Well, okay. The classes were like studies, like the same way you'd go to any class. Like, oh, we have science. Okay, next class, religion. Get out your religion textbooks. And we had textbooks, and they weren't super pushy. I will say that. Insofar as I had to send my son to a Catholic school when I lived in the United States for a year, and that was a lot pushier. And that was a private school. And big long story, I'm not going to go into it, but I did have to send him to Catholic school for a year, and that was far pushier than anything I attended. But it was a thing. It was taught as if it were facts, and it was like, what did Jesus do during this part? Answer A, B, or C, and what did Jesus turn into wine? Was it water? Was it 7-Up? You know, stuff like that. Just really silly things. And then about once a month, we would go to a mass as a class and like walk over to the church near our school and go do that. And so that was about once a month. And also the priest would come in, or a bishop or a cardinal would come in and tell us all kinds of crazy things, like that ghosts were real because they woke up in the middle of the night and saw a ghost looking at them, because they didn't know about hypnopompic or hypnagogic hallucinations, apparently. And waking up and seeing a ghost was 100% factual, you know? So yeah.
So did they also have like a youth group or anything like that to be
No.
involved in, or were you super involved in the church other than what you had to do? Or
There were no youth groups. That's definitely a Protestant thing. I was super involved though, because I learned a few things in that first year of religion once I bought into it. Number one, that there are unforgivable sins, such as rejecting the Holy Spirit, which is, you know, in the Bible proper. And that was scary to me because I was like, how do they know if you reject the Holy Spirit? And I remember the nun was like, oh, God knows everything in your head. And I'm like, well, what if you can't help your thoughts? It turns out, you know, I have very mild Tourette syndrome as well as autism. So a lot of times I don't really have free will. Tourette syndrome is proof that there's no free will, for that matter. I definitely don't have it. And so I'm like, what if you can't help but think things? And they're like, oh, well, you have to. And I was like, I really can't control my thoughts. Sure, most people would say, if you say don't think of an elephant, you're going to think of an elephant. And so I'm like, well, how old am I? Like, are you going to just immediately, like right now I'm thinking I reject the Holy Spirit and I'm like 7. And they're like, oh no, you have till you're 18 to get that out of your head. And I was like, that is a really weird rule that applies to our society and probably doesn't say that in the Bible. And then I was like, well, how do you know there's a God? And they're like, oh, he just always was and always is. And I was like, okay, hold on. One more question. If he always was and always is, then wouldn't he have never come to a point in his infinite existence to possibly make us ever? Like, there would have been no time to make us because he'd always be infinite. And they're like, no, he's a circle. The end. Next kid. Right, and so I'm like, oh, God's a circle. Okay. So yeah, they told me those things, and then that's what scared me, because I was like, if I reject the Holy Spirit, there's no amount of apologizing I can do, and apparently hell is terrible. I didn't want to go. I didn't even believe in hell initially, but then they convinced me, oh no, there's a hell. Just like when you eat the communion wafers, apparently it's literally transmogrified into Jesus's flesh. I used to think that he flew back down from the sky after flying up into space or whatever he did, and that there was just a bunch of people slicing off tiny bits of his skin and putting it in a mixture, and then we were all literally eating him. Because I was like, how could somebody magically transform stuff into something else? So that didn't make sense. So I just figured people were carving bits off of him and he lasted a long time. I don't know.
Yeah. It's rather gross. That would
Yeah.
how that would work. Of course, it would be testable if it was real.
Exactly.
They say, oh, it's not actually happening. It's happening in a spiritual way.
Yeah.
It's like it's happening in a way that can't be tested. Okay.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Anyways, to finish that, yeah, so I was extra involved in the church because of that fear. They also told us that only saints had a chance of getting to heaven, but most people were probably going to hell. So I decided I need to be a saint. And how to do that is to feel that I've been called. Hence, I would do the rosary every day, which is very long and boring. And then I started, when they passed a law that little girls could also do altar serving, not just little boys, I was like the first generation of little kids who were altar servers. So I would do the 5:30 Latin Mass, the 6:30 Italian Mass, the 7:30 French Mass, and then I would show up for the 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and 12:30 o'clock masses as well, which were all in English. And I would serve at all of those and or participate in the choir, because I had to mix it up because it was mind-numbingly dull. And so that's how into it I got, like so into. I walked by myself too. My family wasn't coming to church with me. This was all me.
Yeah. What did anybody ask you anything from your family, or make any comments, or was this just like, okay, that's what you're doing? Or
Yeah, they were pretty laissez-faire about it. My parents are like my mom's. Well, I mean, technically, both my parents are immigrants. Like, my parents are kids of immigrants, and my mom moved here, escaped fascist Italy when she was like 3 or 4 with her family, and then my dad, his family, but not him, were also born all over the place and then moved to Canada, and then he originally was in the United States, but then left as a conscientious objector to NAM. So technically, both immigrants, because he immigrated from America to Canada. Yeah, so they worked a lot and were just busy working. Like, I mean, I had a very privileged upbringing as far as material goods, but they were working a lot. So they were just like, yeah, do your thing. If that's what you're into, I guess. My mom just figured that I would know it was ridiculous immediately because she did. I did not. So
yeah, the mental hooks that they have in religion are created specifically to get people and keep them there. The vagueness of an idea like hell, where it's not even necessarily spelled out to you what it is, it's just really bad, is enough to scare somebody, especially a young kid. So you spent a lot of time and energy into the church, so now you've got an invested mental energy, so now you have the sunk cost of it. So did you convert like publicly or do anything like that, say now I'm a Catholic, or
no. Basically, Catholics baptize their kids early, and so the thing is, most Italians are Catholic, and because my mom had escaped fascist Italy as a mixed Jewish child, so it was just traditional to baptize your kids. Even if you were Jewish, you baptized your kids just so the fascists wouldn't find out you were a Jew. So that was just a thing that was done. Like, we were all baptized in a Catholic church when we were very tiny babies. So I was just accepted as Catholic, and just, in fact, according to Catholics, you can't uncatholize yourself unless they officially kick you out of the church, as they did to Madonna, I guess, the pop star. I don't know.
Oh, they did that. Oh, they did that for Madonna, but not Hitler. Okay.
Oh, exactly. Oh, no, he's one of their favorites. They supported him immensely. In fact,
Yeah,
they love him.
As far as I know, they never officially, what's it called? Excommunicated. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I couldn't remember the word. Yeah, no, they kept him. They liked him. Well, the trains and the clothes, they don't. They're horrible.
I mean, if we excommunicated him now, it would look bad. So, I mean, we're just going to pretend,
right? Let's pretend. In fact, we'll just tell we're going to tell everyone he was an atheist, and also we're going to tell everyone he was a socialist too, and that'll muddy the waters.
Whatever works. Yeah. But so and how long did this go on? I mean, you stuck with this religion all the way through high school and all that as.
Not so much. Like, it went on strong from the middle of you guys say second grade. I'll say that instead of grade 2. From second grade to 8th grade, as I was in a very tiny school, like it was maybe 120 kids tops, and it ran all the way from junior kindergarten, or preschool rather, that you guys would call it, all the way up until grade 8, and then 8th grade. And then I had the choice to go to either a Catholic high school or one of the 5 secular ones in the city. And my fear of hell was still strong at that point. So I thought, well, I'm going to obviously go to the Catholic one where I know no one. And also I didn't really have any friends from that school either, because autism makes you pretty easy to bully. So that was a thing too. I was pretty ostracized and shunned. And also I didn't have an Italian last name, and all these kids were like from Italy, mostly in my class. So I was very much not accepted by anyone. So I went to this Catholic high school, and day 1 was okay, except I fell down the stairs to the locker room. Other than that, I'm like, okay, this is good. And then by day 3, it was declared that I was basically the Jezebel. I had been with everyone. I didn't know what sex was, so that was impossible. Plus I was 13. So and plus I had autism, and I was just this big gawky dorky kid, but they had decided I had done every horrible thing. And then so then by the end of that semester I left, and that is the stuff I have PTSD from. It's really, really bad stuff that occurred at that school, and it was all approved of and participated in by priests and nuns as well. So that's the bad stuff, and I'm just gonna leap right over it. So I went to
kids can be just an incredibly cruel
and adults with them.
Yeah, especially when the adults are ignoring it or even participating in it. That's just beyond understanding how that could happen, and sadly does happen. Not just in Catholic schools, but it happens here. Happens, I'm sure, everywhere. Adults should supposedly know better, but many adults are just growing up kids, so they don't. I had a pretty rough school as far as we did what we called it cuts, where they'd insult you and you had to insult them back. And I remember this one kid was insulting my friend, and he was like, he stood up like ready to fight him, even though he was a short guy, and I'm like, hey guy, I'm hey, what about me? I'm right over here, pick on me, I'll insult you. So he wanted that, like, insulting back. He didn't need it to be a fight. So a lot of these kids were just maladapted in their behavior, that's the only way they knew how to get attention was to misbehave. And it became like a game, like, I'll insult you, you insult me, and isn't this fun? And I never felt like it was fun, but it was, you had to survive. So, and the things we do to survive just can be really difficult. So after that insanity, did you're done with high school now? Is that right?
No, I'm just starting the second half of 9th grade. And I switched schools to the one furthest from that one. And from there, it followed me. And so I kept having to get into physical altercations, which were usually anytime I was by myself, there'd be a group of 5 or 6 guys and girls who would follow me and then command that I fight them before they would let me go back to class. And this was very distressing as a really good student to be made to be late for class. So I had no choice but to continue fighting because that was the first time I'd ever hit someone, was at that horrible Catholic school, but I had to save my life because I would have been murdered otherwise. So I had to keep fighting, and I was not happy about this. It was terrifying to live knowing that any moment people could just come up to me and tell me they were going to kill me. And so it was just this constant living under the threat of death for another 1.5 years until I then switched high schools one more time to the one where all the punker kids were, because I was like, I really like punk music, and I got a feeling that they're the least judgmental people on earth. And they were. So I went to the weirdo artsy school, and that's when high school truly became super fun for me. I still believed in God at that point, and probably some version of Christianity. And then I had the best social studies teacher ever, who taught world religions, which I took, and he had someone from every faith ever, like even somebody who believed in Zeus, come in and talk about their faith. And then it dawned on me, all of them can't be right, but they definitely could all be wrong. Huh. So I stopped believing in religion at that point, but I did consult with the priest at the church I had attended and asked him what was up, and I was having this crisis of faith or whatever. And he's like, well, first and foremost, you need to forgive the people who did this stuff to you, or you'll go to hell for that too. And I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, yeah, you need to forgive. If you don't, they'll go to heaven and you won't. And I was like, that sounds like God's kind of a narc. And he's like, well, no, that's just how it works. You need to forgive. And I was like, how do I make myself forgive? And blah, blah, blah. So that sent me on a God quest after the world religion course. And then I came away realizing, it just all fell apart. So then I gave up all religion, but still believed in God for no reason until I was 30. And then all of a sudden it just broke. Everything broke. And I was like, oh my God, there's nobody in my head. There's nobody watching me. And I mourned him for 2 years. And now it's like constant joy because I finally am not being hovered over by a horrible, withholding, abusive parent who's imaginary. So
yeah. So that idea of God stayed with you. Did you continue like praying, or?
Yeah, I did. I think it was more of an OCD thing though, because I don't know how familiar you are with OCD, but for a lot of people with OCD, they'll have compulsive thoughts and actions they do to avert death and destruction occurring to them or their family. So I had little rituals I had to do to make sure, if I don't do this, then everybody I love will be in a car crash, and horrible things like that would pop in my head. And it's very time consuming and horrible, and you're just compelled and you can't stop yourself, and it gets worse. And also religion tends to create worsening symptoms of OCD.
Yeah, especially with the physical rosary that you could manipulate that, and so I'd imagine that could get very since it's so tactile that and especially because you can loop it, so the counting that is present in OCD, just loop that over and over and over.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
You've hit the nail on the head. And I was a big rosary fan, and then I started upping how many rosaries I would do a day as a child. So that was horrible too, and it got really out of control. So yeah, you get it.
Yeah, it's like sets of, I'll do it 10 times and then 10 times of 10, and
right,
sets, and because it has to be a magical number, otherwise something bad will happen.
Exactly.
So that's all due to without that idea,
Sorry, I keep getting a phone call in, and so I'll just keep rejecting it.
Okay.
Because we're doing this, so
I was like, "What was that?"
No, I'm very quickly just going to write back because it's my son. I'm just going to say we'll get back to you in an hour. Hold on one sec.
No problem.
Reply. will get back to you in 1 hour. Okay, there. Okay, done. That was it.
Yeah, if you have to go, it's fine.
No,
But
it's
yeah, so did you find any joy in worship or any of the did you go to church when you were an adult, or was
mm,
it
okay. I went to church as an adult because I straight married an American and moved to New York State for 17 years because I got teen pregnant because I got no sex ed because Catholics. So in fact, I was taught that women didn't have orgasms, that our joy from providing ourselves as a vessel to our spouses, which were always to be men, that joy came from having a child and having a husband to serve and to raise for God. So I didn't even know orgasms were a thing. I didn't know how babies were actually made until I was a pregnant teenager, because as somebody with autism, nobody taught me about sex and I didn't pick up on it and there was no internet. So yeah, I didn't even have an orgasm until I was 6 months pregnant. That was really depressing to know that I'd like done that and like kind of screwed up my life and gave away my my art scholarship, and it was just for providing myself without any actual like joy in it. But anyways, so yeah, teen pregnant and married to an American, lived in America for 17 years. And then I was in a Bible Belty area south of Buffalo. And so I was encouraged heavily to join people's churches. That was like, hi, oh, so nice to meet you. So what church do you go to? And I'm like, none. And they're like, oh, well, you have to come to mine. So I did church hop whilst letting everyone know that I didn't really believe in any religion. But at the time, I still thought there was a God. And so everybody had their hooks in me trying to grab me for their church.
right? Yeah.
Even the Mennonites, I hung out with Mennonites for a while, and all they wanted me to do was hit my children. That was their main message I got. And I'm like, I don't want to hit my children. They're really cute and they're smaller than me. Like, why would I do that? I don't think that's a good idea. So,
Yeah. You got kind of lucky in that you didn't get absorbed into another religion or cult, or
definitely. Yeah. And I think it also helped that my ex-husband's an atheist. He was like a natural born atheist. He just never believed. He always thought it was the silliest thing ever. And his whole family, although officially Catholic, were unofficially all very strong atheists. They just thought it was the silliest thing ever. So that helped a lot by him being like, I don't know why you would even bother. Like, and I'm like, okay, I'm just doing it to be polite. And I think it was my fear of not being embarrassed by his opinion of me. I just didn't want him to think I was an idiot. So that's what else kept me out of joining up with anything. So
did you still have like maybe a fear of hell? That's why maybe you kept the idea of God so long, or
I
okay,
just it never I didn't know that evidence was necessary for stuff. Like nobody had ever explained that to me. And so it just didn't occur to me. Never once thought that astounding claims need huge evidence. I didn't know anything about any logical fallacies whatsoever. The minute I discovered all of those is when everything broke. And I was like, I don't think there's a God. And oddly enough, the person I dated, the two people I've dated since my ex-husband, because he left for my best friend. We're still friends, though. It's all good. So the two people I've dated since then, or the three people I've dated since then, actually, all of them are atheists because everyone in Canada is an atheist. So it's like, at least that I know. And it was really easy to stay away from that. And it was really easy to learn about critical thinking and logical fallacies after that. So it was, the God thing just kind of hung on because I think it was more of a hope that I would see my family members and friends. Side note, I went to the artsy high school, also meant that these were the kids who were most likely to use H and stuff like that. And a lot of my friends died. Like I've had 51 friends die since high school till now, and I'm 50. It's horrible. Like some of them were very best friends, in fact. Most of them were either overdoses, self-exited, or a couple were just, out of the blue aneurysms or heart attacks. So it's really bad to lose that many people that you love. So,
yeah. H is heroin. I'm
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just didn't know if you could say that on YouTube or not, or if,
I don't know. Whatever. I'll say whatever I want. Eat it. You don't know. No, I'm pretty sure I can't. Well, I don't know. I don't care. But yeah, you don't know what's in it. You don't know how it's made, and goodness knows, if it's balanced right. And so when somebody gets a hold of that, it's gonna mess with them
Mhm,
and possibly kill them immediately, if not very
mhm.
quickly. And it's just messed up. If we,
My
yeah,
ex-sister-in-law died of an overdose like a couple of years ago, and she was like one of my best friends in the whole world. So it's like it's still happening. This
yeah,
whole people I love die, and so I'm like, and I think everybody experiences death at some point, but it was like just death, 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 like constant. Like I remember like one week in high school, 4 funerals in one week, and I was just like, this is so. It got to the point where I just didn't grieve properly because of this whole God thing, and that's what else I resent about it, because it makes you think you're going to get to see them again, so you don't grieve properly and you don't think to make sure you tell everyone when they're alive how much they mean to you. And so now
yeah,
I make sure that people know how much I freaking cherish them. I
yeah.
am
'Cause, I mean, you're gonna have another chance. Yeah, the
right.
afterlife is conjoined with the idea of God. I mean, one could hypothetically believe in an afterlife without there being a God, but it just seems to
Right.
one goes with the other.
Mhm.
Uh, was there any sort of uh, crisis, existential crisis when you kind of lost God, and that, oh no, I'm mortal now, and what does that mean? Or
No, honestly, it was the opposite. I was finally able to accept that death was most likely oblivion. And with oblivion, you don't know anything. So it's just like before you were born. So that was like, I would prefer to be able to just be around my loved ones forever. But if I can't, I'm definitely willing to take oblivion because I won't know anything. I'll be just as happy as I was before I was born, which is nothing. And I'm
yeah,
okay with that. It's far scarier to think you're going to be punished for arbitrary crimes of thought than it is
yeah,
to accept oblivion. I did have an existential crisis though that lasted for 2 years when I lost religion altogether, because
mm,
that was more of a free floating, oh my goodness, I'm freaking out. And so I was a little nuts there for about 2 years.
mm.
It was very like I started crying in the grocery store and just could not stop. And then I cried for about 2 years. So,
Is that kind of like a feeling of not knowing what to do, what your purpose is, or
not even so much purpose, sort of like reality, just the idea of being existing freaked
mm,
me out, and how I am me looking through these eyes and nobody else is me, and just the whole thing. And I realized also that this now was just like my PTSD manifesting, but I had never seen any therapist or gotten any help for it because my mom's one of those, oh, they try to diagnose kids with stuff to make them all zombies. And I'm like, yeah, no, no, mom, that's not how it works. Some people really need medication, your kids, for instance. But yeah, so I finally did get on antidepressants, was diagnosed, got therapy, and it really, really helped. Like I cannot, I obviously I don't like big pharma, but I sure love their products because they keep me
yeah,
alive. So
yeah,
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 um,
yeah. I mean, all that stuff wasn't very well understood in late '80s, or
yeah,
late
late '80s, early '90s,
90s,
nobody
early
knew that.
90s, even
Yeah,
late 90s. I mean,
hmm
now, of course, even in the aughts, or whatever we call it, it still seems to finally now be starting to be more and more accepted. Like, oh yeah, what, everybody has a therapist now, kind of
right.
thing. And they're talking about medications all the time and all this, and there's talks about legalizing not just marijuana but all drugs
Yeah, and
potentially.
I think they should
And
be.
I
I
think
think
that, yeah, I think
yeah,
so. Maybe you'd have certain requirements, maybe, that you'd have to do. It's like if you wanted to do
mhm,
whatever the legal version of heroin was, they did. It's like,
yeah,
here's this thing that you have to fill out this form, that you have to take a test, or whatever loopholes. But
yeah,
if it was really cheap, and cheaper than you would be able to get it otherwise,
hmm,
then, and maybe you could have a exit program. Here's how to
that
get off of it. And it would
Hmm.
just eliminate the problems. Maybe it would cause a few more, but I think it would overall eliminate. The war on drugs was lost a long
Oh
time
yeah,
ago. But,
yeah.
we had
It's
Dare
horrible.
and all that, and just But so it seems to me that if it hadn't been for this concept of God and religion stuff, they would have had a drastically different trajectory in your life. Even if you become pregnant, you would have maybe been like, oh, hey, I can get an abortion or whatever. Of course, that's
Hmm.
thinking is completely out the window when you're religious. You're not, you know, that's
Not
not.
100%
Oh,
because
really? Okay.
I had again, these were all linked to the things like the stuff that happened at the Catholic school. It can carried on in many different ways, including some violations of me because of being seen as that person still. So one of them involved me being violated, and I was uh, 15, I guess, early 15. And I became pregnant from that. And my mom just immediately took me to get me one. And they're free here and they're very easy to access. In fact, there are birth control clinics or centers as they're called, and they're just everywhere. And you can just go in there and they have, a bowl of condoms and spermicidal foam, like just sitting out like candy, and you can just grab as many as you want. And it's really awesome. I immediately went there and was like pretty much told, nope, this is what's happening. Do you want this person in your life forever? They are a stalker. You need to not associate with them, and they will never leave your life if you carry on with this. And so you're not. The end. I'm your mom. And so I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, it wasn't like you'd be surprised at how many religious people get that done and don't think anything of it. This whole like
Mm.
moral authority thing is a construct and a nauseatingly stupid one, because even people I've met and interviewed myself that have been right-wing evangelical, it's always murder. And yet you'll talk to them for a long enough time and you'll hear that either something bad happened to them and they were either forced to go through with it, which messed them up, or they eliminated the problem when they were very young. So, well, I was very young, but I wouldn't now. But it's like, why would you
Yeah.
want to take that away from other very young people then? What's wrong with you? Like, it's BS. It's utter BS.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, different culture. So that was kind of an assumption because the culture that I had was, it's like, oh, it's you're not, it's not allowed,
Mhm.
whatever kind of. I don't know if that's more Protestant than well, I suppose Catholics have it too,
Oh
but
yeah, Catholics are on
it
paper
did,
super against it, but
but
not in real life.
it didn't really cross over for you, so that's good. But still, there's other things that definitely affected you
Mhm.
in many different ways, and um,
It did. My
and
whole life would have been far different. For instance, when I was 13, we had a lot of really good friends. Part of the reason was because I got baptized a bunch of times and wound up with a bunch of different godparents. So, uh, or rather, not formally baptized, but I had the first one, and then I wound up with a bunch of different people who were declared to be godparents. And so I had a lot of different people of different faiths, all of them now secular. And so because of that, that meant that they were from all over the world and they were connected to people. And one of them was connected to the Eileen Ford Modeling Agency, which is like a big real one, not like a fake nonsensical one. Like they've signed numerous people. And so this person sent in my pictures and they wanted to sign me. And I also got an agent and I was supposed to begin acting, but this was shortly after all that bad stuff had happened. So I was still 13, just about to be 14. And I was supposed to be in the movie Cocktail with Tom Cruise. And then, not a big part, but in the bar scene. Again, 13 years old, but apparently, good enough for a bar scene. And so I panicked before that and couldn't do it. And then I was supposed to be in Lambada, the Forbidden Dance, which is just funny and stupid because it's named that. And I couldn't go to that either. So then my agent fired me. And then the Eileen Ford thing was like, okay, you need to lose 10 pounds. And it just set me on a path of severe anorexia that I battled for years. But I couldn't lose another 10 pounds because I was already very, very slender. And also, the stuff I'd been through caused me to become a chronic eater and purger. So that messed me up. And so, like, had all that bad stuff not happened, I could have been a celebrity or something, or at least made more money than somebody who was a special ed education assistant made. you know, who is now disabled because PTSD got so bad I can't leave my house without a grown up. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's hard to say, of course, you know, what your life would have been like without the concept of God. You know, certainly would have been different, but maybe you
Right.
would have had to face different challenges.
Of course. Of
Who
course.
knows? You know, of course.
Right.
Maybe it would have been far worse. You know, we can't say.
Exactly. I
But
do
I do.
think that.
Yeah, but definitely, I think that the belief of God, especially this fear of hell, that's just an unnecessary thing that you had to contend with, you know, for a large part of your life. And
Hmm.
you know, that's one of the things I do hear a lot, you know, from these deconversion stories is, you know, that fear of heaven or the reward of fear of hell or the reward of heaven is a huge incentive, you know, especially, you know, what you said with, you know, hey, you get to see everybody again. Oh, that's a great,
Yeah.
you know, idea. That sounds good. You know, I'll get to see them again, you know, and yeah, won't that be nice? You know, it'd be nice for a while, but you know, then after a couple years or so, you'd be like, okay, I'm done with you guys now, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Basically. Yeah. The only people, yeah, really the only people I couldn't get sick of would probably be my kids. But other than that, I would get bored
Yeah,
of
yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
So,
Eventually,
yeah.
yeah.
And my
Given
kids would
enough,
get sick of me. So, you
yeah,
know,
eventually, you know, given enough time, we'd have done everything that there is to do and said everything that there is to say, and we get, you know, like, is there a way out now? Can I leave? I'd like
yeah.
to leave reality now, please. You
Yeah.
know,
Exactly.
so
It does sound a little bit
yeah, so
horrible.
you know, so the this show called The Good Place where they taught,
Yes. Oh
if
my
you
gosh.
yeah, I loved it, and the ending where they fix everything because they give you a way out. It's like, yeah, there you go. It's just have a way to be. If you're done, you're done. You know, and you'll know when
Yeah.
you're done. You know, and I thought that was it's like, yeah, okay, so you can live forever if you want to, but if you get sick of it, you can be done. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it's an interesting idea. That so if there is an afterlife, that's what I would hope, that there's a way to be done when you're done. But at
Right.
any rate, there doesn't appear to be any evidence for one, so I have to be skeptical of it. Uh,
Same.
yeah, and so now you what do you do on your channel primarily? I think it's music related.
Yeah, I do a lot of music stuff on this YouTube, and I haven't done very much lately because starting in 2015 with a certain presidential candidate at that time coming out, and me having had a history in being tangentially related to people who were in the know and not in the know, but knew other people who were involved in modeling, and knowing that when I talk about horrible modeling people, that would be John Casablancas, who was very good friends with JE and DJT, and was involved in vetting girls, not women, to send to their yacht parties. And this was an open secret. So I've had access to like the flight logs and all of these things since the Freedom of Information Act came out, like years now, because I was going to write a book about my experiences and how people in religion and people with power, wealth, and fame tend to acquire these things if they're able to, for the sole purpose of abusing people. And because of my own experiences of being abused, and Ford being one of the only places that wasn't just finding girls for rich dudes, which I was very grateful for. But again, I didn't end up signing up with them because of the whole extra 10 pounds. It just made me hyper aware of the stuff that person was up to. So them in 2015 running and then winning messed me up mentally, and my mental health has been on a decline ever since, because he won't go away. And it's because of the stuff I've gone through when I was young, and it is horrible to know that somebody who has done that to girls and involved with people who have done that is allowed to have that much power, and that people are on their side and they don't recognize that so many people have been abused. And
So
it's,
your channel's also become kind of political as well, then.
well, kind of, but I couldn't even do anything on that channel anymore. So
I see.
recently I got involved in TikTok, and that has been more about being an activist. Basically, I try to stand, because when all that bad stuff was going on I had to hide in a snowbank occasionally to escape people. And I didn't have a coat on. It was just in my little school uniform. Luckily, no kilts. I mean, we all wore pants and long skirts and stuff. But I remember hiding in snowbanks and just praying fervently, God, if you get me out of this, I will dedicate my life to preventing pain for other people. And then when I realized there was no God, I was like, I made that promise to myself. So I need to be a voice for the voiceless. And if people are being oppressed or hurt in any way, I need to do that, or else I'm lying to myself. And I don't want to lie to myself, because then I can't sleep with myself at night. So
yeah, it's obvious. These things are obviously very important to you and dear to you. So
right.
I wish you the best of luck with the advocacy, especially if anti-bullying sort of
That's
thing.
exactly it.
Very much in support of that. I've been bullied. I've had to, I've had it rough as a kid. Didn't have, it had different effects on me than you, but, still had effects. And, something in the zeitgeist of how we do school has to change so that
yes,
that's not a thing. I don't know what it is, why it's a thing or how it became a thing, but I know that, it was from very, even at a young age that there was different bullying going on.
yes,
And, there was no class on, how to behave, no ethic class, no morality class. And maybe instead of doing a religion class, we could do a class on ethics or morals,
yes,
how to be, or maybe just a class on how to be good to each other and not be assholes. I don't know. That's an idea.
yeah.
No, we can't do that though. That would make sense.
That's actually been yeah, no, that's been fought against. One of those Moms for Liberty people just came out and said now they're trying to teach our kids all this empathy ideology and getting kids to talk about their feelings. And apparently that's bad too, to, the people who have drunk so much Kool-Aid that I think their kidneys are shutting down, and the toxicity has gone up to their brains because they are now against anti-bullying programs and being kind classes. And I don't get it. I mean, again, I have no horse in this race because I'm Canadian and we have like 5 major political parties here. So I'm good. We don't have that 2-party system, and our nation tends to be pretty progressive overall. And it's, again, I think it's because, again, 17th most atheist nation, far more progressive than America, which I think ranks 153 in most atheist nations out of, unofficially approximately 200 countries, and officially I think 165 or something. So yeah, it's not doing so great with that.
So that's, and I'll have links to your TikTok and whatnot in the description. And anything else you want me to link to, because I totally asked for all those links and didn't think of it until just now because I'm a professional. Yeah.
Oh, no, that's fine. That's fine. No, you're wonderful. Actually, I think I respect you and like you so much, and I'm just delighted by you. So you are doing a great job.
I
you really are.
I've made many errors online of speech and saying the things I shouldn't say, or saying the but I'm a staunch skeptic. So it comes out, and people don't understand how I view the world. Even if I explain it, it's like, look, this position that was, this one position was introduced to me and I never heard of it. And so I was skeptical about that, and people were upset that I was skeptical about it. I'm like, well, now I'm even more skeptical about it because people are upset. So now what? I don't care. Yeah. Bring it on. Bring on the hate. Yes. Yes. And I'm like, now, it's like, that's not the way to, so even, as adults, we still don't know how to play well with each other necessarily. And figuring that out is part of growing up, and it's been something I'm still on the journey to do that myself. I have anger issues, and people know this, and it's, every now and then that will be an issue for me, and I'm sure I've burned some bridges because of that or whatever. And it is what it is. You just, from this point moving forward, we have to do the best that we can and try to improve. And it sounds like that's what you're trying to do. And if you had a message to give to your younger self about God, or to give to people that might be listening that still believe in a God, what would that message be?
Probably there's okay, number one, you're going to get through this, I promise. Number two, there has never been any scientific discovery that involved magic. What makes you think there's going to be? Those would be the two things I would say. So that's
Yeah,
about it.
yeah. Magical thinking is very dangerous. I think that the concept of God, if it was more like an abstract thing like math, like the number one, it's the number one is it's a nice concept. It's very interesting, but it's not real, And so
Yeah.
if we used God in that way, then I think there'd be less problems. But goodness knows, there'd still be problems, just be different problems. But anyway, thank you so much for your time and energy to share your story with everybody.
Thank
And
you. Thank you.
yeah,
Oh, and my TikTok is Godless Humanist, or rather at Godless Humanist. So that's
okay,
where I am. My
okay.
profile picture is me, but with a blue filter. I don't know. And my SoundCloud is the Oxford Review is the name of my band. So that's all. And I think there's links on YouTube to that too. So
Cool. And you guys are going to cover Catapult Pancakes, of course.
I don't know what that is. What is that? Oh no. Help me out here. I don't know what that is. I'm too
It's
old
all
to
right.
know.
Nobody knows what it is. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. This isn't about me. It's about you.
Okay, I'm gonna look it up right away. Is it something you've done? Is it something you've done?
Maybe. All right. Well, okay. Hit the
Okay.
button. Hit the button. Okay. Thank you so much. I'll leave you with I'll give you the final word. Well, then we'll hit the button, everybody. Until next time. Be skeptical, and after that, stay skeptical. Amber, say whatever, and then I'll hit the button.
Love matters, so make the most out of everything and use as much love and compassion and skepticism as possible in all the exact same amounts. So that's all. Okay. Love you. Thank you. Bye.
And